Welcome to the Scalable Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we discuss the most scalable strategies, tools, and approaches to successfully invest in real estate. Learn how to make the most impact of your time, automate your real estate investing business, find off-market deals with minimum time invested, and leverage your capital to create as many income streams as possible so that you can achieve true financial independence. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mason Clement. Hi everyone, Mason Clement here. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to ask you one question. Are you sick of the wild swings in the stock market and ready to try something different? Did you know that investing in stocks actually put you at the very bottom of a company's capital structure, meaning that there's practically 0% chance that you're going to get any of your money back in the event that the company files bankruptcy? That basically you're putting yourself in the riskiest position for a questionable return. Personally, I hate the unpredictability and just waking up and having half of my investment gone when I didn't do anything wrong. So what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually make higher returns on a consistent basis by investing in the opposite end of the capital structure, which is actually the safest place to be, which is on the debt side in a first lien position. And you can do that by investing in real estate, and specifically investing with my company in notes that are backed by the land that we purchase. So if you're ready to diversify your income stream, go ahead and go over to scalablерei.com and click on invest in the top right corner. There you're going to find a form that you can fill out to determine if you're eligible to invest with my company, Celion Capital, and we'll be reaching out to you to schedule an introductory call and speak more from there. So thanks a lot, and let's jump into the episode. Hi, Scalable Real Estate Investors. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Mason Clement. And today we have Brian Grimes, who is the founder of 24/7 Cashflow University, which teaches students how to create passive income, escape their 9-to-5, and teach them how he scaled his business from 1 to over 100 properties per year. I don't want to steal his thunder too much, though, so let's jump into things. Brian, what's going on today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. So before we dive into too many different areas, what I like to do is have my guests just discuss their background, their path. Everyone's got their own path. So what brought you to today and to real estate in general and to this Cashflow University?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things brought me to real estate. One was just wanting to be my own boss, to kind of have control of my destiny and just being fiercely independent in that sense. So went to Columbia University, met some great mentors there, and knew that, I didn't want to get railroaded into like investment banking and what everybody else was doing coming out of like, the econ major from Columbia. Wanted to be my own boss, got into financial planning and started to learn as much as I could about, money and wealth and how to create generational wealth in that sense. So, I was working 100% commission. So that was rough coming out in your early 20s, not really having a salary, living at home, just trying to scrape by. But I learned the sales game. And as I got better at that and started to make commissions, I would just pay myself first. I would pay myself the first 10 or 20% of each commission check. And then I increased that to 30, 40%, as much as I could. And I set what I would call like a money plan. So the money plan will have 3 components. One is the savings component. You have to pay yourself first. You have to put money in, but you have to put that in like a separate account that you're just not going to touch. And that account grows to a threshold. And my threshold was $10,000 to $15,000. And once I hit that threshold, my intent was to unload it into cash flow and real estate. Whatever I could get my hands on, turnkey, FHA, house hack. I knew I wanted to do multifamily. So I executed that play. I saved aggressively, hit my threshold. And once I got there to I think I hit about 17,000. I was just looking at properties until I found my first multi and put that money in. I think I invested about 7,000 into a duplex with a unit in the basement. It wasn't like a legal unit, but you could live in it if you're the owner. And I was going to live there and probably make about $400 or $500 a month in cash flow to live in my own property. And that was my, first deal and what got me hooked on real estate.
All right, nice. Just curious, have you, like on the financial planning side, have you learned about like infinite banking and do any of that stuff?
Definitely. I mean, I started off selling insurance and annuities. And
Hmm.
I actually, insurance is kind of a second passion for me. So I got to dig into, whole life contracts from the 70s and see, fixed guaranteed interest accounts of 6 to 8% and all different types of product lines that are out there. And at all levels, because I manage money at a high net worth boutique firm in Midtown Manhattan for millionaires. I was working at a firm where we managed 1.4 billion for about 300 privately wealthy families, and some of them had tons. Like one guy I know, he had maybe like 10 or 15 whole life policies, and I helped him to reformat those to just kick in some of those guaranteed accounts and pay the premium, set them on auto pay, and started saving them tens of thousands of dollars a year on his policy. So I know all about that stuff. Is definitely it's definitely something that people should learn about. Even when it comes to real estate, one thing, when you're investing in real estate and you're doing the BRRRR strategy heavily, you're engaging with different amounts of debt, which creates liability. When you put your money in a life insurance policy, if you're going to invest that way, and in some of those accounts, that can be protected from creditors. So you can get a lot of creditor protection by leveraging your whole life policy or your index life policy and investing your money there, taking loans out and being able to withdraw money before you're 59 and a half or whatever you're dealing with in your IRAs. But it's also creditor proof. And that can be huge when you're engaging in real estate, because sometimes the market shifts on you. Everybody's got some story out there about how they were investing 20 years ago and the market collapsed. You would have been much better off if you had some of your liquidity invested in a whole life policy versus sitting in a bank waiting for creditors to come get at it.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing that always makes really excited about. Gets me excited about those policies is you can invest that money and it's still growing, so you never interrupt that compounding of interest, and then you also decide the payback plan. So it really is like the bank on yourself, and you're the banker. It's as long as you got enough capacity to do something.
Yeah. It's really about putting the money in, having the capacity, having that extra liquidity, and then just overstuffing those policies with cash. So, if you don't put enough cash in to those policies, they're going to be a little too thin. The fees will kind of eat away at the gains that you'll get from some of those guaranteed accounts, or even you can be like invested in index markets like the S&P 500, the Dow. It just depends on what your investment strategy is within the policy, but overstuffing them with cash is how you get massive growth in those policies, especially in the early years, like year 1 through 5. You have to overfund them as much as possible.
Yeah, with the paid up edition rider, right?
Yeah. That as well, definitely.
Okay, cool. Not to go too far off on a tangent. I have a couple prior episodes where I dive into that in a little bit more detail, but I think we can stop it on that for
Yeah.
now. But
No, that's fine.
I know that you talked about your first deal just a minute ago, but you scale your business from like one to over like 100 properties. So can you discuss that process and like any bottlenecks you ran into as you were doing that and how you did it?
Man, there's almost a bottleneck every day when you're trying to scale, especially when you're doing it the first time. Like right now, I have like my mentorship program where I can show people how to do it, and you can avoid every pitfall, every bottleneck that I ran into. But when you're just going through that process, it's constant iteration. So starting off with deal one, the first thing you need to learn is how to pretty much become your own GC, how to manage projects. You need to understand what every screw and nail is that goes into a property, what it costs, and the turnaround time. How I will explain this to people is, imagine you wanted to invest in cars. If you wanted to be a car investor, I would want you to know what a mechanic knows, which is what pieces go into a car, the process of putting it together, how long that takes, how much the labor costs, and just that general process. If you know that information, you might not need to know that to just invest in cars, but knowing that is going to make you an expert investor, because no one can pull the wool over your eyes. When you're dealing with real estate and the BRRRR strategy, you need that same level of knowledge in order to be able to be successful long term. So I started to focus my energy on that after getting burned by a contractor. Just said, look, I got to wake up. I need to learn all of this knowledge so that I can start to scale this thing. And once I got my hands around that knowledge through trial and error, it was then about building your own crews so that you can cut down the cost of labor, pay everybody directly, pay everybody by the day, and understand what a clean out guy gets paid versus a plumber versus a electrician versus an electrician's helper, understanding what every individual piece and player gets paid, and then scaling that gradually, organically, getting more people involved, certainly adding the wildfire or the gasoline on the wildfire, which is, you know, the hard money lending and the different lenders that you need to be successful in scale. And then getting the infrastructure to scale, which would be, you know, the warehouse, the dump trucks, the physical inventory that you need to scale.
Okay. By warehouse, you mean like storing your building supplies, or what do you mean? I mean, I guess
Definitely. No, definitely. Like you need when you get to a certain level, there's a savings at volume. Everybody says it, but not enough people get to the level of volume to actually access that. So when you're operating at a full scale, what a full scale would be if you're doing like 10 or more deals a year in the residential space, really in any space. If you're doing 10 commercial deals a year, you'd be like the top 5% of commercial developers. If you're doing 10 or more residential projects a year, like full gut rehabs, you're in the top 5% of national real estate developers. So once you get there, you can start to order at bulk. And that might be going to, like, if you go to a place like Floor and Decor and I order flooring for one property, 1,200 square feet, maybe that's like $4,000, right? But if I go in there and say, well, I'm going to do 10 houses this year, rain, sleet, hail, or snow anyway. So give me 12,000 square feet of flooring, I'm going to get a 30 or 40% discount. Now, if I have a warehouse that can hold that inventory, you just look at the numbers here. So the warehouse might cost you maybe $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month for a pretty big warehouse, maybe like 5 or 10,000 square feet. So the savings on that one floor order, you're going to save like 8 to 10 grand just on flooring. Now I'm going to go and do that on everything, right? I'm going to go do that on windows, flooring, sheetrock, lumber. Some of those materials are so big, you don't want to stack up your warehouse with them necessarily, unless you're predicting like price increases, which I've seen. I've stocked up on lumber before lumber spiked to 300%. You can make plays like that, but also finishing items, tile work, bathroom vanities, countertops, diverters and shower kits. You can order these things off of a boat from China and save like 30, 40, 50%. And this money really adds up. So over the course of time, I mean, people don't, when we're developers, we're constantly spending money. So we only see what's left over at the end of the process. But when you start saving, I mean, you might, at a full scale, like I was operating at, which was closer to 10 deals a month, 20, 30 deals a quarter, you're saving about $250,000 in materials every quarter, just by having a warehouse. And a warehouse is costing you $9,000 or $10,000 a quarter. So it becomes a no-brainer. You get paid to scale up and to go to the next level. And that's the same concept with getting a dump truck, where you're not ordering a dumpster for $600 per dumpster. I now have a dump truck that I bought for $50,000. I 100% financed it, didn't put down any money, got bonus depreciation, wrote off the entire $50,000 in year one, and the note is $650 a month. And I'm running those dumps directly to the dump at $90 a ton now. So you start saving $5,000 to $10,000 a month just by getting a dump truck, and you get a $50,000 write-off in year one for acquiring it. So as you start to scale up, you just save all over the place, and that adds to more scale, right? Because now you have more capital to recycle into more BRRRR strategy deals. So that was the philosophy, that most people can't see that money, but once you start to see it, you chase it down, especially if you're going to be in this game long term.
All right, that's really interesting. And I know that you're living in, I think you told me the Yonkers area, which is over by the Bronx, for people that aren't familiar with the New York area. But you're investing out of state primarily, is that right?
Yeah, I was watching something the other day, and there was a question asked to a real estate developer, and they say, what do most cash flow investors do wrong? And the guy says, they invest in their backyard. And he says, well, what should they do if they want massive amounts of cash flow? He said, invest where there's good cash flow. So I've always been of that mindset of putting your money where it goes the furthest. I kind of learned that in asset management. Some of the best asset managers, what do? They buy undervalued securities and then they hold them until they reach fair market value, and then they sell them and they realize the profit in between. You should be doing the same thing with real estate. You shouldn't be, out in Utah right now, or out in San Francisco right now, or Boise, Idaho, overspending on real estate, hoping that the prices just continue to rise or that rents continue to rise. You should take that mindset of learning how to invest out of town, put your money where it goes furthest, putting your money where properties cash flow the most, and you'll get better returns in the long and short term. So yeah, I always invested out of town. My first deal I did in town. Then I got the job. I moved from Philly to New York because I got the job at the high net worth firm up in New York. And once I did that, I was kind of already just investing out of town. I own this property 2 state lines away. And as I managed that property over the course of 6 months to a year, the fear of it just kind of left. It became a thing where, I wasn't going to get in my car and go down to the property if something went wrong. I was going to solve it, pick up your smartphone and start to think creatively and use today's technology to solve it. And once I did that, then it didn't matter if that property was in Philly, in Baltimore, or in Texas, and I'm living in New York. It's all about these remote management systems and what you can do there. And I knew that was going to be the path to long-term success, being able to get up and pack up and leave if the cash flow in my immediate area dries up.
All right. So I imagine that the solution is to have like a team on the ground, right? Because otherwise, how does anything get done? Because if you have to evict someone, you have to have a team member to help do that. Or if there's I don't know, big water leak at midnight in one of their houses, like how do you handle all these?
It's fun. The water leak's funny to me because I can recall getting a call at maybe 1 a.m. and a basement might have had like 6 feet of water. Like it was unbelievable. So I've dealt with these types of calls. You definitely need boots on the ground, right? You need people physically there, but you can get that when you start to operate at scale. If you're your goal as a out-of-town investor is to be constantly working on deals. Constantly working on deals is how you scale up in the first place. You have to have volume. You have to be working on this one deal while you're also focused on closing on this one and lining up another one. So how I would put it to you is you would need to be working on one deal, and while you're working on one, you're lining up 2. Then you're going to grow your team to be able to work on 2 deals at once. And while you're doing that, you need to be lining up 4 deals. And you're constantly scaling your way up. Let's say you get just to the point where you're working on 2 deals at once, and you always have a pipeline of 1 or 2 deals coming in behind that, and you just have one crew. Well, you're always going to have people working on a house. When that happens, if there's an issue, you call your team lead, you send them out to the property, and they'll deal with the property maintenance issue as they're building the new properties as well. So it's really about making that transition on your first couple of deals to becoming your own GC, building your own crews, and having those contacts and relationships. And then once you have them, you can leverage them through, systems, remote management systems, even FaceTime. It also doesn't hurt to have what I would call eyes and ears. This was one of the things I wish I started off with. And it could have saved me maybe $40,000 getting burned. Here's what most of us do that costs us a lot of money. And it's about the eyes and ears. Most of us will get like an uncle or somebody who is like, yeah, my uncle, he says he was like a real estate contractor and he knows, construction. Maybe your uncle knows how to put down flooring, but he fancies himself like a full developer, right? So he's going to keep an eye on the property for you. He's going to go out once a week, make sure the work's getting done. But what you don't know is your uncle doesn't know anything, really. Like he really doesn't know anything about construction. So he can't keep an eye on it. It gives you the false sense of security, which is the kiss of death in real estate development, thinking that you have somebody watching your back who isn't. So you take your eye off the ball, your foot off the gas, and before you know it, the contractors run the game on you. They're ahead of draws. The work's bad. It's not done. And they're pretty close to just running off with your money and disappearing. What you really need is eyes and ears. This is an independent third party, somebody who's sitting at home on the couch. Maybe they're driving Uber, a friend of a friend, maybe one of your friends who you grew up with, maybe a friend of a relative. Doesn't matter. Somebody who's in that city that you want to invest in, and you're going to pay them directly just to show up with their smartphone 3 times a week and video the property, walk through, FaceTime you through, take videos, send them to you. You can watch the videos during your lunch break, after work, on your commute. Having that level of visibility, it does so much. It's almost, I could take 5 minutes really explaining the value of that. And if you want to get into it, we can, but the value, like at a rudimentary level, just the value of the contractor knowing that somebody's going to show up, and I'm running them round robin, Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, next week, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, show up at 10 a.m. this week, show up at 12 p.m. next week, show up at 4 p.m. on Friday to make sure nobody left early. The power of running people like that in that property, and the contractors are looking around, it speeds up the rehab. It gives you ultimate control. And you have this independent third party that's not going to try to hide things from you and say like, oh no, the work's done, but it's really not, because they're just getting paid to show you whatever, they can, whatever they see. So having that person, and this is somebody you could pay $35 a visit, $35 a day, 3 days, you're paying them $500-$600 a month, and they're going to save you, 10 grand a month in speed, efficiency, control over your job, and not getting burned. So you definitely need boots on the ground, but also having the team constantly working on deals gives you a Rolodex of people you can contact to solve issues as they pop up. You don't need to be there. And at its full scale, you being there is actually detrimental to your success.
Just because of the opportunity cost, because you're not lining up those new deals.
Well, you can't man the ship. So what happens is it's kind of a funny transition. You go from working on 2 to 4 deals at once, and you're like, all right, I'm crushing it. I get in my car, I drive out of town, or you might get on a plane and fly out of town once a month. You go check on your projects. Everybody's pulling at you because you're the boss. They want to show you their work. They want to complain about somebody else. They want to talk about the project. And you see 4 deals, you go home, you're burnt. Then you scale up to 8 to 10 deals at once, and you drive down in your car, get on your plane, and you see 5 deals, and it's time to go home. You can't even see all the projects because people are pulling at you. There's too many projects now. The only way to see the work is actually to sit at home, essentially as air traffic control behind your technology. And you can watch all the videos on all your projects in 2 hours, but you can't physically get in your car and go see the work because there's too much physical drag and delay time. So you become incredibly inefficient. And while you're driving and commuting, you're not behind your laptop, behind your technology. You can't respond. You can't look at new deals. You can't get out offers. You can't curse out the title company because they're messing up your deal. Like you can't do all of these things because you're too distracted in the street. So unless you have a partner who's sitting behind their computer managing this thing, and somebody who you can really trust at a high level, who's super competent, you just become incredibly inefficient. So the only way to scale to the fullest level where you can do 100 deals a year is with the technology, is as air traffic control. You can't do it with your physical boots in the ground. You need the leverage. You need a full system that shows you how to do this. And since that's the case anyway, and I don't care if this is in your backyard either. This could be in your backyard. You're still not going to be able to do it. Not in a day. You can't see 40 properties in a day. It just doesn't work that way. You'll hit traffic even locally and not be able to get where you need to go. So you once you learn this, you start to lean in on your systems. And then once you lean in on your systems, you start to realize I could be doing this. I could be in Dubai right now doing this in Texas. Like it doesn't really matter because the systems are more powerful than any individual. And I've challenged people to say, you're a good developer. but I have a team. I have, 100 contractors, all these systems, inspectors. You can't beat me. You'll burn out. You'll burn out in a week, and I'll be at the park lifting, doing push-ups, and I'll come back and more will be done than if you were physically in the house trying to push, the project. So it's just a funny wrinkle. It's almost like a paradox in the sense where you get more done by not being there than by being there.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. And then once you finish the renovation, you get it rented, everything for the actual management. I know you say you could have like a team there, but are you actually managing it, or do you actually hire a property manager that's local?
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite deals, like I've hired property management, right? Like if you want real mailbox money, there is no better mailbox money than getting a property, maybe like this. Like I'll grab a property in Baltimore for like 30 grand. I'll put 20K into it in renovations. Maybe I'll just park the cash into the deal. And then I'll section 8 it, hand it over to a property management company. The property's cash flowing $1,200 a month. They're taking their 120, they're 10%. And I'm getting $1,000 a month just direct deposited into my account. I'm not answering the phone. I'm not doing anything. That's the best money in real estate. It's like the best feeling in the world because it's true passive income, what we're all looking for. And I think property management is one of the most uneven relationships in business. Name me another business where somebody does 100% of the work and they take 10% of the money and give you 90% of the money. Like it almost doesn't exist. It's one of the most unequal relationships in business you'll ever see. So if you can take advantage of that, do it at full scale. If you had a 50 property portfolio, well, that 10% is like $6,000 a month. So if each property is bringing in like $1,200 a month, right? So now I'm going to look at this differently. I'm going to say, well, can I go and hire a series of virtual assistants for $700-800 a month who can answer the phone and then coordinate with my contractor? Even if I picked up a handyman that I paid, $200 per visit, I actually am going to run at a break even point at that scale, and then everything beyond that is going to be much cheaper than property management. So there are ways to scale your way even out of the property manager. So my best advice is if you're doing it out of town, unless you have a ton of time and you're like a full-time real estate professional, which talk to your accountant if you don't know what an actual rep is, a real estate professional. Talk to your accountant about that because there are big tax benefits to that, especially if you're married and your spouse is W-2. But there are just some benefits there to handing this over to property management early on in that process when you're scaling early, deals 1 through 10, 1 through 20, and then making a shift at some point to bring in that activity in-house through virtual assistants, your own systems, and just managing, your own activity. So ultimately, you want to cut out as many middlemen as possible and do everything directly in-house. But early on, leaning on property management is very powerful, and you get to learn from if you build a relationship, you'll learn from your property manager how to manage correctly, how to file eviction correctly, how to keep your paperwork tight, and that long-term monetization skill set is super important in real estate.
Okay, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the rep status, because that was my next question is if you use a property manager, then suddenly you're not materially participating anymore, so you can't capture that depreciation and shield your income, right?
I mean, it depends on what part of the business you're in. If you're doing the BRRRR strategy and you're managing the full rehab project, acquisitions, you're still overseeing the property manager as well. If you're doing it full time, you're going to qualify as a rep.
Okay.
You're going to qualify.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still learning about it. So obviously, neither of us are CPAs, but
Yeah.
or tax CPAs specifically. But yeah, I'm still learning like the ins and outs and nuances. I have 2 rent houses, but we got a property manager that has been handling that for a couple of years, and this will be my first year as a rep. But I know I'm still not going to be like materially participating in those because I'm not really doing anything with them. But I guess, yeah, to your point, that makes a lot of sense. If you're managing that renovation and stuff, then there's very strong
Yeah.
argument. that you're still
Yeah.
working on it.
No, absolutely. Even if you're just doing one deal and it takes you a year, and you're not doing anything else with more than 50% of your time, you're going to have a pretty strong argument that you're a rep. It's not necessarily about the volume of deals you're doing or how many deals you're managing, but just that you're in real estate day to day, or for more than 50% of your time.
Yeah, exactly. They got a bunch of criteria like 750 hours, but also more than the day job. Because once you have a day job, there's like huge red flags, and
Huge red flags.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably not going to win.
And no, it's not a game you want to play. You
Yeah,
don't want to play that game with the IRS. They have a high
yeah,
win rate.
yeah, exactly. One CPA told me that he did hear of like one case where this guy won because he was a pilot and he had tons of free time, and so yeah, 75% of his time was in real estate investing. So yeah, you could justify
Yeah.
that.
Everywhere he flew, he was looking at real estate. No, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be hard
Yeah.
to beat that argument. Definitely.
Yeah, or I guess maybe like a firefighter that is. I've heard that actually one guy on my show, Tim, his name was Tim Leon's a multifamily investor, and they're doing like 24-hour shifts, which allows them to take on second jobs, like invest in multifamily and stuff. So anyway, um, enough loopholes on REP status. So moving on, in your like bio or like topics that we could possibly discuss, when I was putting together some questions, you had said there's an affordable housing crisis, which is obviously something that you maybe see in headlines, but can you just talk about that a little bit more and maybe some solutions for solving it?
Yeah, I mean, we're becoming a renters nation, and there are renters nations, around the globe, right? Like, think about places like Japan or places like London. There are places here like, in the Bronx, in the Bronx County, or in certain zip codes within the Bronx, you'll see that 80% of the people or thereabout are renters, or also in places like LA, like, higher than 60-70% of the people who live there rent. So we're seeing a trend, and there's also these massive investment companies that are coming in, these big hedge funds that are coming in and buying up the Sun Belt, buying up all the Midwest, all the single family properties, thousands and thousands per year, and turning them into rentals. So we're becoming a renters nation. And when we think about rent, there's all different sectors, right? There's like A, B, and C class, and then there's regular housing, there's co-living, there's affordable housing. And when we think of affordable housing, we're typically thinking Section 8 and like low income housing tax credits, or something with like subsidized housing where you can't increase the rent. But we have an affordable housing crisis, here in America at the moment. And the people who create solutions to solve that crisis are going to get paid, hand over fist, because that the demand there is insatiable. Like, you really can't satisfy this demand. There are millions of Americans living on their parents' couch that can't afford rent. They can't afford $1,100-$1,200 a month plus utilities. They don't have that option. So the question becomes, can you create housing that is good to live in and affordable? Because if you can, and you can make that housing cash flow, I mean, you can get very wealthy, and you can do a lot of good for the community and for the environment by going in and rehabbing, these properties that desperately need this work. I mean, most of these major cities were built in 1910, 1915. These properties are 100 years old. They need developers who know how to rehab them and put them back together.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I was listening to a webinar yesterday about a new build to rent development, and it's just really interesting how much institutional money is moving into single family residences, and just that concept of the build to rent community. It's like a multifamily property, but an aggregation of them and like a single family community. It's just, yeah, and like I can kind of definitely see it like in the future where everyone's living in these communities, and that's just it. And there's like very, very small amount of actual landlords.
Yeah,
Just
I
to
mean
see the earnings.
that's the goal. I mean, that's what these big hedge funds are envisioning. I mean, they're looking globally and they're seeing it, and they're saying, well, eventually, think about it. If rates go up, prices continue to creep up higher. I mean, there's going to be a pullback, but let's say prices creep up higher. How we look at it is a basic PE ratio. If you're like a stock person, you're going to look at the PE ratio of different stocks and make investment decisions. Well, for real estate, the safe price to earnings ratio is about a 6 to 7x multiple. 6 to 7x. So think about a place like Philadelphia. The median income is $50,000 or thereabout. So that would mean houses for single family starter homes, 3 bed, 1 bath, 1,200 square feet, 1,500 square feet. They shouldn't be going for more than 300 to 350,000. 6 to 7x of the median income. Once they get beyond that, in places like California, where it's like 20x, it becomes unaffordable. It just becomes unaffordable for the average American. When real estate becomes unaffordable for the average American, you're either in a massive bubble or you're going to, if it sustains itself, you'll be in a renter's nation because nobody can afford to buy. They have to rent. And that's what we're looking at. And that's what you see globally in these different renters nations.
Huh. Yeah, my wife's from Hong Kong, and it reminds me because like prices are just so crazy there, and they've been driven up because of mainlanders buying up tons of real estate over there too. And I hear about like these folks that are, they go to school and they graduate from college, they're still living with their parents and like up into like their 30s. And obviously it's a different culture and it's more acceptable to live with your parents that late on in your life and stuff. But like, yeah, people are saving literally like half their life to make the down payment on a property. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, we're looking at it. We haven't really seen it here, so we're not thinking about it like the average person. But trust me, these hedge funds, they're dead serious. I mean, they're buying their hedge funds out there. They're buying anywhere from 3 to 10,000 properties a year right now in the Midwest. And they're not, they're not all liquidating these properties. They're holding them and they're putting them on the market for rent. So it's going to be interesting, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to get to a point where they talk like haves and have-nots. There's going to be landowners and renters. And trust me, you want to be on the ownership side of things, not for your individual residence. You might rent, but you need to own properties. Because if we are a renter's nation, you're going to want to be a landlord and participate in some of those gains for sure, versus just be a renter and not be in a position to own any land. So for some of us, we're running out of time to kind of get off of the fence, get off of the sidelines, stop listening to people's horror stories about real estate who've never really invested, never really bought a property before anyway, and get into the game and start to learn this game before you get priced out of every market and just can't get in.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Even my own business, like it's going okay, but I've been mainly just doing flips. And so if you're just flipping, you're not really obviously holding and not really getting that depreciation, and you're not getting the rental income and all this different stuff. So yeah,
Definitely.
important.
No,
Important
definitely.
to start adding that to my business too.
Definitely. A good mixture is healthy.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about affordable housing crisis, but what about investing in Class C neighborhoods? What are some challenges there, and how do you mitigate against that?
I think the challenge with Class C is really just navigating the neighborhood. It's not as easy as like Class A. Class A, it's you want to look for the worst house on the best block, and rehab it, and it's a great neighborhood. The demand is kind of already built in. You don't really need to be as I guess sophisticated. It's more of a money thing. So I would say like I tell people this: there's two things in real estate. There's money and knowledge. And the less you have of one, the more you need of the other. So if you come into real estate, you just have a ton of money, you don't need to know anything. You come in with $2 million, go in an A-class neighborhood, burn through some of the money, and you'll figure it out and you'll be fine. You'll get some knowledge. But if you don't have a ton of money, you need a ton of knowledge. And when you get in the C class, you need even more knowledge because the analysis is block by block. You can't just go and say like this neighborhood is perfectly fine. But even in a rougher neighborhood or a C-class neighborhood that has some gentrification over here, high comps over here, rougher pocket over here, you need to be able to buy on the outskirts of gentrification, on the outskirts of high comps, and buy on a good block. Every bad neighborhood has good blocks. So you need to understand how to identify those and buy there. So you're dealing with that. You're dealing with lenders and their buy-in to the mission. So it becomes a lot easier to invest in C class when you're doing it amongst other developers. So where other activity is happening, and or you can just operate at a volume where lenders are going to be like, well, yeah, this guy's going to do 50 properties in the next 2 years in the zip code. He's turning it around by himself. Type of a philosophy. So you're dealing with that. There is crime, there is blight, but I mean, if you turn on the news, there's like crime and blight everywhere now. I mean, there's a mass shooting everywhere. There's something going on everywhere now. So a lot of that is illusory. People thinking that this neighborhood is bad, but my neighborhood's good. They're all kind of, I mean, good people and bad people live everywhere. So learning how to navigate, learning how to deal with some of the crime. Like if there's crime or there's more break-ins in C class, you're going to have to put up security cameras. You're going to have to put up different types of reinforced doors and window guards to protect your asset during the rehab process, because the chance of break-in is higher. Now, you might be on a block where you got the nosy neighbor who's the block captain, and she's going to call the cops. I mean, your guy might go in there to swap out a toilet, and she'll call the cops on him. He'll have he'll have a sheriff with a gun in his face by the time he steps out of the house, and that could be like just a good block and nosy neighbors. You don't quite know what you're going to get, but you just have to get comfortable navigating it and go through that process. One thing I will say about the C class is the profits are much higher. Like the cash flow is much higher. The property taxes are lower. The cash flow is just way better than in the A and B class neighborhoods. And you're putting yourself in a position where you can experience exponential growth in terms of appreciation. I mean, we get paid 3 ways in the buy and hold game. 1, tax write-offs. 2 is depreciation, which plays into that. Well, cash flow, tax write-offs, depreciation, and then appreciation. So can I buy this property for 50, 60, maybe 80,000, and then 5 to 6 years from now it's worth 210, 220? When you do that at a volume, if you went out and did 20 of those over the course of those 5 to 6 years, that's how you become a multi-millionaire, because you're just building massive amounts of equity by buying underpriced assets and holding them until they return to fair market value. So I found that you can do that strategy a lot better. If we look at appreciation between an A class and C class neighborhood, my assets are worth more relatively than I paid versus yours. You might buy something for $500,000 in the A class. 6 years from now, it's worth 600,000, but you didn't lose any sleep. You were fine. I bought mine for, 80K. They're worth 240 in 6 years. I made more money than you pound for pound on my assets. I 3x my portfolio value versus you getting, an extra 18%. So you have to think about these things, but it helps to have, a mentor or work with somebody who's done it and who knows how to navigate those areas and those neighborhoods so that you can get in and get on the best blocks, even in the rougher neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's the main thing I'm thinking of is either you got to go there yourself or go there yourself with someone so you don't get jumps and I don't know. You got to obviously know like where you're stepping into and stuff. I mean,
most of these neighborhoods, people will think you're the cops. Like most, and here's the thing: most of these neighborhoods, if I take you into some of the worst neighborhoods of Philly or Baltimore right now, there's going to be contractors. I'd say on every block almost, hanging off ladders, hanging out windows, banging hammers. The C class is not unaccustomed to developers, contractors, and real estate activity happening. I mean, they're used to it. That's why they call it that's why gentrification is there. Where does that happen? It happens in the C class. You can't gentrify an A class neighborhood. It doesn't work that way. You go and you gentrify the C class. So it happens all the time. And a lot of the fears are more perceived than actual. Like most people, if I take you on like a rundown, like drugged out block, even the drug dealers, they're not they're not trying to really create a problem with me or you. They're trying to run their business, So they're not looking for, oh, let me go mess with this developer. So what's he gonna do? Well, he's a civilian. He's gonna call the cops. Now you got a bunch of cops on the block, and you can't sell your drugs. So now you're losing money. And it's really, that's the thought process going on in their head. It's all about the money. They're not necessarily going out of their way. And half of the drug dealers, realistically, they're going to watch your property and make sure nobody's breaking in because they don't want you calling the cops. So in many of these instances, you can create, not that you want like, hey, I want to be like rubbing elbows with the drug dealers, but to a degree, there is some type of a relationship that you'll have to develop there to just be like, hey, I'm doing my thing. I'm not worried about necessarily what you're doing. And it's part of rebuilding the neighborhood. As you put more bodies into neighborhoods, more people, you move people back in. I call it gentrification, adding density to the neighborhood, adding more eyeballs. If you move in a single mother with 4 kids, that's 10 sets of eyeballs. There's more people who are going to call the cops, who are going to complain, who are going to run blight and drama out of the neighborhood. And spend money at the local corner stores and have that money bouncing. And it really improves the neighborhood. So you stick with your activity, you make your cash flow, you keep your nose clean. You won't get into a lot of drama with like some of the things people are concerned with, drug dealers and stuff. You might have a few more break-ins, but you can mitigate. Some of this stuff is, for me, it's fun. For me, it's fun to, a property gets broken into and it's like, oh, no problem. I'll show them. I'm going to show them. I'm going to make my property so hard to break into. You're not even going to want to. You're just going to go to the next easiest property to break into. I'm going to put up the door guards, the cameras, the everything. And if somebody breaks in here, I've caught people with my systems. And I give them to my mentees. I have systems. I've caught over maybe 5 to 10, break-ins. Like I could send you a video right now of a guy who broke into a property and the cops show up. 2-minute response time. They're there in my footage, taking the guy away. Not that I want people arrested, but it's part of the game. The other thieves have to see that so that they know, well, I don't want to break into this guy's property, or that might happen to me. So you just create a system. Every problem in real estate has a solution and a system. So as soon as you can identify it, you come with the system, you solve it out. And once you solve out some of the stuff in the C class, then it's just more profitable, period. Because all these other things kind of go away. I already solved through that. It's just more profitable to me. It's not more dangerous, it's not more risky, it's not more concerning. It's just more profitable.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely see if after you build a foothold in a certain area too, just kind of growing from there.
Yeah.
Just, you start getting more comfortable with that area and everything too. So, okay.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, I think we've covered most of the questions. Is there any pitfalls with like Section 8 rentals? Like say in a Class C neighborhood, you finish your job and everything, and then you go and rent it out. So any like downsides to Section 8? Because I've heard some good things. So I got a friend that exclusively does that in Dallas area. But go on.
Yeah, Section 8, I did a YouTube video called Is Section 8 Great? And it's like, there are pros and cons, right? So let's talk about the cons of Section 8. So some of the things that can be wrong with Section 8 is the general process. Like it's a slower turn time. So when you're doing like the BRRRR strategy, a lot of the time you're in a rush to get this property tenanted. Like I want to tenant it yesterday because as soon as I tenant it, I can get it refinanced out of. I can do my cash out refi, get my money out and go and recycle that capital into the next deal. So you want it to happen fast. With Section 8, they're doing kind of boneheaded things at times. Like they'll send out one inspector and you have, in order to get your property qualified for Section 8, for those who don't know, any property can get qualified for Section 8. It just has to be up to HUD housing standards. In order to prove that it's up to HUD housing standards, which is like scrape and paint, think of like if you were going to get an FHA loan, the property has to be like very livable, scraped and paint, like up to code generally, and in reasonable condition. So in order to prove that your property is there, you have to get an inspection from a qualified Section 8 inspector, somebody from their office. So they'll send out one inspector to certify your property. And they'll look at it and say, look, it looks good. but you got to fix these 5 things. And you're like, all right, cool. Give me the list. You fix the 5 things. Then they send out a new inspector the next time. These 20 things are wrong with it. But the other guy said 5. I don't care what he said. I said 20. So now you got to fix the 20. And you might go in this roundabout for 2-3 months of them sending out people. Then you schedule another inspection and it takes 3 weeks, and they send out a new person and they come up with another list. Then it takes 3 more weeks, and it can be extremely slow. The tenant pool, you have to know how to screen the tenants, because almost everybody has bad credit. Then it becomes hard for most people to underwrite, because they're like, well, everybody's got bad credit. So how do I underwrite now? Well, you have to underwrite the individual. You have to know how to talk to people or test tenants to see if they're going to be easy to deal with. You have to do things like visit the property that they are currently living in to see what condition they keep that property in. That's going to be the indicator of how they take care of your property. So you have to manage a lot of these different things. If you can manage it correctly, get your inspection turnaround time down through like trial and error, the money can be really good, especially if you're getting tenants where Section 8 is paying like 100%. Even with that, you're dealing with professional tenants. So a lot of these tenants, if they don't want to pay the rent, let's say they're responsible for 20% of the rent, they're going to try to get the property violated. They're going to call the city. They're going to call Section 8. Oh, there's something wrong here. This light bulb is out. Fail the property. And they think if the property's failed, they're not going to have to pay you the rent, and they're going to try to game the system. So you can deal with a lot. You have to know how to underwrite Section 8 tenants. You have to know how to screen them. You have to know how to deal with Section 8. So there's just some headaches, right? There's just some management headaches for that guaranteed government money that you're going after. I've done, over 100 Section 8 properties, and then I've shifted to more co-living properties and gotten away from Section 8. In places like Baltimore, I like Section 8. That's the other thing to say is Section 8 is not one entity nationally. It's super local. So there are Section 8 offices that don't run any inspections. And then there's major city Section 8 inspections work in a way that I just described, like Baltimore or Philly. I had one inspector in Baltimore. My property was perfect condition. He said he was going to fail it because one of my contractors left an apple on a brand new granite countertop. An apple, an uneaten apple, by the way, just an apple. He said, well, I usually fail people for that. I said, this tenant's been waiting 3 months. They're living in a shelter with their kids. They're waiting 3 months to get in here. And you're of the mindset that you're going to fail my property because my guy left an apple on the table. So you're dealing with strange, you're dealing with too many moving pieces and parts with Section 8. And sometimes the people who are in the system, they're not really there to help the people. They're just there to power trip at times. They're not there to help people who need affordable housing. So you're just dealing with, a confluence of different energies. And it's not as easy as just having your property and marketing it for rent. And if they got the credit and the cash and whatever you're looking for, you can move them in the next day and it's done. So Section 8 can be great, but it can not be great, especially if you don't know how to navigate it. It can be a nightmare, and you can be sitting there for months trying to get a tenant into your property. So you just need to know what you're getting into. Once again, deal with somebody who's navigated hundreds of Section 8 inspections and knows the process and can guide you so that you're not going through all of those pitfalls.
Okay. You said you moved more to the co-living. Is that just people sharing the space?
Yeah, co-living, I would define, to me, co-living is the solution to the affordable housing crisis. So what does co-living do? Well, let's say I have a 3-bed, 1-bath starter home, and it's in like rough condition. I can go in and full gut renovate that property. And let's also say this property rents for like $1,200 a month, 3-bed, 1-bath. I can go in and gut it and reframe it as a series of master suites. So bedroom with a bathroom. And the only way to get into this bathroom is through the bedroom. So I'm going to blow up this house basically and reframe it on the interior as 3 beds, 3 baths, 3 master suites. And then I'm going to flip the kitchen from like the rear of the house, get rid of the dining room. And I'm going to build like an eat-in type of kitchen with a breakfast bar, tiny kind of condensed like kitchen, living room, breakfast bar-ish type of area that is a common space. And then everyone will have essentially their own little studio where they're going to have their own bedroom, and then their own bathroom that's going to have like a stack washer dryer, stand-up shower, glass enclosure, like really nice. They might have they're going to have their own mini split system. They can control their heat and AC, very energy efficient, very modern, hardwood floors, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. And now I can rent each of those master suites for like $750 a month. So I'm taking my rental income from $1,200 a month on this property to $2,250 on the same property, the same asset, but I've added, my word again, density into that property. I've increased the density of this property. This is creating a product where now the person who's living on their mom's couch can afford that $750 a month, especially if I include the utilities in that price. Maybe I'll bump it up to $775 a month or $795 a month and split the utilities amongst everybody. So now I've created this product that will cash flow me $1,000 a month in just pure cash flow per property. And is creating this affordable housing that doesn't exist anywhere for a younger person who doesn't cook anyway. I mean, they're ordering off Grubhub, Seamless, the corner store. Like they're not really cooking. They're not Chef Ramsay here, so you're creating this product for younger, Americans, working class Americans, even where they're going to live, they're going to save, they're going to have a fixed payment every month, and it's going to be affordable. And you're able to make serious cash flow while you're doing it and rehab properties, rehab the neighborhood. And that has been something that has allowed me to have more community impact. And I found the demand to be insatiable. Like for COVID, if we can all think back, like March 2020, like the peak of kind of, we're shutting down everything. Between March and June 2020, I tenanted over 100 co-living units in Philly. And people barely wanted to leave the house, right? So this activity was just happening very rapidly. And I was like, man, the demand is insatiable. Where else can I build these, and how can I do, more of these deals? So really, to me, was the solution. There are people who qualify for Section 8. There are people who qualify for low income housing. And then there's everybody else living in the basement, living on the couch, millions of Americans, and they need co-living, and they love co-living, and they flock to it. And it really works for them.
Huh. That's funny. Funny you say that. When I lived in Manhattan, well, I lived in a lot of places, like most people probably do, but I lived in Chinatown, by the BD stop, like the Bowery stop, and
yeah, I know that area.
Yeah, like right kind of Canal Street. I was between Hester and Canal. That's what it was. And anyway, it was a co-living space, but it was funny because it was actually like an office, and there was this Chinese doctor guy that lived at one end of the hallway, and then on one side of the hallway you got these offices he's renting out, and then on the other side you got some bedrooms. At the end there's a kitchen. So it was like totally ghetto, like unintended kind of funny setup. But it was actually crazy because I was paying, I think, $500 a month to live in Manhattan. Like, in my opinion, one of the best, most exciting places in Manhattan, Lower East Side. So as a kid in his 20s, so that was a great place. That's what reminded me of it a lot. But yours sound a lot nicer with stainless steel appliances.
Yeah, no, well, that's the tweak. That's the wrinkle, is to create this irresistible product, to create the perfect product. Because, what do people want? If I give you a option between sharing a kitchen and a bathroom, which are you going to share? The kitchen. I don't want to share my bathroom, like, please. And that's how people think. So you start to build. I learned this from one of my architect buddies who does a lot of commercial office space redesign in Manhattan, from a great family as well. And we would get together, grab lunch and talk. And he would always talk about redesigning real estate based upon how people use it today, because he's dealing with office space. And he's like, people don't use offices like they used to use them 50 years ago. People are startups now. They're using office differently. So we can recreate the space and have more common and co-use space. And they'll rent out the boardroom. We don't need 10 boardrooms. It's ridiculous. So he started to rethink it, and it sparked in my mind, like, I need to rethink residential real estate and how we're building these properties. Why do people have living room, dining room, kitchen? On the first floor, nobody's using a dining. People don't eat together anymore. There are families that were like, oh no, I don't want to eat with you. They want to watch YouTube on their laptop or on their iPad. Their kids don't want to look at their face and shove down a mouthful of broccoli. They don't want to do it. So you can redesign the property for the way that people use it today. When you do that, you're going to unlock demand. It's called like build it and they will come. You will unlock the demand that you don't even know exists, because you're going to be that leading edge developer that is creating this new product that is starting to fit people's lifestyles in ways that they didn't even think about yet. So it's getting really close to the action, close to the product, and tapping into demand in an interesting way. And when you do it with CoLiving, I mean, the cash flow just gets completely unlocked. I mean, you go from $300, $400 a month per door to $1,000, $1,100 a month per door. And that's, it's insane. You can do 10 deals and have $10,000 a month coming in, and you can do those 10 deals in 2 years, especially with the right lenders. And, we got lenders that'll give you 100% of the money to acquire and rehab the property. So all you need is the knowledge and the connections to get in and out of that deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. A hard money lender would do that, right?
Definitely. Hard money lenders would do that all day.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. So last question before we wrap up. Could you just tell a little bit more about this 24/7 cash flow university that you got going on?
Definitely. When you're having success at anything, people want to pick your brain. So there are a lot of offers for a cup of coffee. Let's go out to lunch. Explain to me, the real estate game. There's only so much you can give somebody over a cup of coffee. As I'm sure I'm sure people are picking your brain, like, how do I flip this? And, how do I get started? So I went into my back cave. I created the 24/7 Cash Flow University, which basically is housed on teachable.com as far as the content goes. And it's everything from starting off from nothing. What mindset do you need? How do you get the money? How do you raise money? All the way through the journey, starting with your first deal, becoming your own GC, building construction crews, doing deals out of town, all the systems, all the knowledge, all the lenders, all the growth you need to get to 100 deals. So I break it all down step by step so that you can digest it. And then I believe a lot in one-on-one mentorship, which I think is a little bit more unique. There are a lot of group mentorship like programs out there, but I like to spend time one-on-one on Zoom with a lot of my people to give them that real custom coaching that they need to get better. So I spend a lot of time. You get, unlimited text, email access with me. We're talking about real estate. I'm getting you through your deals. We also have a boots on the ground program where for people who want a deal done in Philly, I actually build a property for you. So I'll take you through all of my remote systems, my 150 contractors, all of my stuff. And we'll help you to locate a deal for pennies on the dollar, 20, 30 cents on the dollar. We'll put the construction team in place to rehab the project at cost. So we'll cut out the GC markups. We're going to pay directly the cost of labor and materials. And then once the rehab is done, we'll plug you in with the lenders. You'll get the refinance done. We'll get the tenants in place, property management in place, and show you how to really do this thing. So I just started that. That's been having a lot of success. And there are people tapped into that from outside of the country, all over the country as well, tapping into U.S. real estate, tapping into, remote opportunities, living out in Texas, tapping into Philly, living out in Canada, tapping into Philly. So that's been having a lot of success as well.
Okay, interesting. And if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about that Cash Flow University, where do they go? How do they do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. You can find me on YouTube, Brian Loves Cash Flow on YouTube. And that's easy to remember because I love cash flow. So Brian Loves Cash Flow on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, Brian Grimes _247 CFU for Cash Flow University, Brian Grimes _247 CFU. You can find me on LinkedIn, Brian Grimes. Just type in like Brian Grimes Real Estate, you'll find me. You can tap in directly. I have a training for you guys, like a free training. You go to www.workwithgrimes.com/cashflow. Workwithgrimes.com/cashflow. You can tap directly into a free training that'll show you how to acquire properties for pennies on the dollar all across the country. So you can tap in there. everything, anywhere you go to YouTube, you go to Instagram, you go to Facebook, Brian Grimes, you go to LinkedIn. It's all backlinked, so you can get a hold of me, shoot me a text. We can hop on the phone, talk one-on-one, and try to get you where you're trying to go in real estate.
All right, perfect. Well, definitely hope our listeners learned a lot. I personally did. I think this was a great conversation. So thanks for jumping on the show, and hope to have you again back soon if it makes sense.
No, definitely. Thanks for having me. It really had a good time, and hope we dropped a few gems on it today.
Oh yeah, definitely. Sure. All right, that's another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to leave a review and subscribe on whatever channel you're using to listen or watch these episodes. And also be sure to go to scalablerealestateinvesting.com, scroll to the bottom, and fill out the form to sign up for our email. And you could also reach me directly at mason@scalablerealestateinvesting.com. That's MASON at scalablerealestateinvesting.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me to either partner on deals or even be considered to do your own episode on this podcast. Thanks again, and have a great day.